Hi, it's David Avrin with the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. So, how are you tracking and communicating with your contacts, your customers, and your clients so that opportunities don't fall through the cracks? How are you reaching out in a way that's effective for you, but not annoying to them? My guest on the podcast today was one of the early pioneers of customer relationship management systems. Jon Ferrara is here to talk about the future of CRM, how we can better use them to create a great experience for both your team and your customers. Throw those yellow sticky notes away. We're going to future-proof your customer relationships with Jon Ferrara from Nimble CRM. It's David Avrin on the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. Back in 20 seconds.
You're listening to the Customer Experience Advantage podcast with David Avrin, featuring candid conversations with some of the most influential leaders in business today. Sit back and listen in, or feel free to watch the video version online. This is the Customer Experience Advantage podcast, and here's David Avrin.
Thank you, and welcome to the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. I am David Avrin. If you're listening to the audio version, we're of course available everywhere if you want to watch us on video and see this interaction. I have really good hair today, so you can go to my website at davidavrin.com, or you can go on YouTube and watch it there. But I'm excited about this one. I will tell you, I'm going to be really honest. This early on was the bane of my existence back when I was in my 20s. And of course, this is pre-internet, pre-Google. If we wanted to research something, we would go to the library or find some resource within our company that had a database that was quickly outdated. But as I would talk to customers and clients and others as well, I had a desk covered with sticky notes. And I'm trying to remember, this one was there, and somebody would sit and say, don't sit on my, don't touch it, don't touch anything, because I knew where everything was, to the point where my supervisor, my boss, got so frustrated with me that she sent me to like a 2-3 day Franklin day timer. Of course, if you're old enough like me in my late 50s to remember those as well. Now, of course, it's Stephen Covey's involved with that. But then there were some early pioneers. It was ACT, it was Outlook to an extent, and it was Goldmine. Well, one of the pioneers of that is my guest today. Jon Ferrara was one of the pioneers behind it. I'll read his little bio, and then we'll say an official welcome. He's a serial entrepreneur, noted speaker about social sales and marketing. He has reimagined CRM, customer relationship management, by building Nimble, the simple CRM for Microsoft 365, Google Workspace. He's best known as the co-founder of Goldmine Software Corporation, one of the early pioneers of CRM for small and medium-sized businesses. He's been recognized by Forbes as one of the top 10 social CEOs, top 10 social salespeople in the world, and top 100 marketing influencers. Jon, welcome to the show today.
David, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to join you for a conversation that I hope enlightens your audience about why relationships matter even today more than ever.
You know, and I think here's the thing is I don't think we have to convince anyone how important the relationships. It's just, how do we do it? How do we do it in an age of digital? Because we seem to have these sort of two competing forces. On one side, it's that social intelligence, what's the word I'm looking for? Just understanding the importance of those relationships and how do we stay connected and how do we build meaningful relationships. On the other side is this push towards automation and technology that purports in many ways to enhance those, but sometimes creates distance. And so I'd love to talk about that, but almost before we do, tell us a little bit about the history of the genre, of the category. What was the original need? What was the antiquated way that we used to solve it? And where have we come?
So these are all great questions. I think the roots of CRM is the Rolodex. It's where we used to organize our business cards. And we found that it was a great place to store cards, but you couldn't access them. You couldn't segment them. You couldn't build a process for them. And ultimately, building and nurturing relationships at scale and turning those relationships into measurable, mutually beneficial business outcomes requires a process. And so I think that one of the first processes that happened was the 6x9 index card. And what that was you could put in the name and the company and some details about who you're calling, and you can make a note on the call, and then you put a recall date on the card of when you're supposed to call them back. Because
Right.
usually when you're having a conversation with, what are you going to make? 20, 30, 40 calls a day. When you have those conversations, you say, okay, David, I'll follow up with you in 2 weeks about that. So you put in the date, 2 weeks, and what that is, right? And then you file it based off that date. And every day you come in, you have that set of cards that you need to call. And this is your sort of system, your recall date system. That was kind of the early days of contact management at SFA. But that really didn't translate into the digital world. As we started to adopt microcomputers, people started to use spreadsheets for this. And then they said, well, there's got to be a better way. But got to remember, back in these days, there wasn't Outlook. Outlook was
Right.
Outlook Express. It was an email inbox in DOS. And so it was about this time that I was working as a sales rep for a technology company out of Dallas. And they would give me leads, which really weren't leads. They were a piece of paper with phone numbers of IT people at large corporations. They'd go get them.
Give us a time check on this. About what year was this?
86, 87.
That's what I remember as well. Yeah.
And so in 86, 87, I was cold calling people at large corporations, making notes on paper, put my appointments in my day timer, and I do my forecast in a spreadsheet once a month the night before it's due. And this was content management, SFA, and what you might call the roots of CRM. And I knew that there had to be a better way to do this. And because I had a computer science degree and I worked my way through my degree at a computer land store, I knew every software program in the market at the moment. And I knew there wasn't a program that integrated email, contact, and calendar, and sales and market automation. What I did find was a number of tools that were taking stabs at it. One was a thing called Act, which was a plugin to Symphony to manage contacts. So
Yep.
Act back then wasn't even the contact manager that you know of today. It was basically a tool that allowed you to manage tasks for contacts for an individual person, not a team. There's a thing called Telemagic, which basically automated the old recall date system that I mentioned earlier. There's a thing called Snap, which was sales automation, or it was sales forecasting. It was pipeline management. And there's a thing called SaleMaker, which was a telephone calling system where you could pound out 50 calls a day. What I wanted was really a blend of all that gave me the contact management, but for a team, because I worked as part of a team in this district office, and that district office worked with corporate, not just for prospects and customers, but even after the sale happened. So I wanted a relationship manager that enabled the whole team to participate in the entire journey of the customer, which is much different than CRM, which is a tool to pound leads by salespeople. So when I pioneered Goldmine, we started the company on $5,000, never took a dime of venture, grew it to about $125 million a year in revenue, sold it about 10 years later. And I think what made us unique was our focus on a relationship manager for a team, not just a CRM for salespeople. In fact, there was no term CRM back then. It really was content management for work groups. That was my sort of vision. And then SFA evolved from that.
Let me ask you a question though. When you're talking about teams, because we're dealing with some of this right now too, as we do some sales for my speaking and my other ventures as well, is part of the team's portion of that is to make sure that everybody's clear who's contacting whom, right? So that they're not stepping on each other. Because when we had the physical Rolodex, which we still use the term, but kids don't know what that even means, is that, wait, did somebody already call from that? And so it's clarification.
Yeah, if you're not on one page about who you're talking to, what's pending, who's going to do it, what's been done, who's done it, then you don't have the context you need. Context is that history and pending. Insights is who are they and what is their business about. Without context and insight, you can't get anything done. And when you call up American Express, you better believe they know who you are. They know who's talked to you. They know what's pending, and they do it, right? And that is the secret to business, is the basics. And so that's why I really emphasize contact management for the whole team. And think about this. It's not just sales. It's not just prospects and customers that enable you to grow your business. At Nimble, we engage with editors, analysts, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, investors, advisors. There's a constituency around my business, and there's a team of people that engage with them. So if you're listening to this today, throughout the idea of CRM, what you need is a team contact platform with good sales and marketing capabilities in it that enable not just the salespeople that eat outreach at scale, but your biz dev people, your PR people, your investor people, because all of them are, quote, engaging people to drive an outcome.
Right. But I want to talk about it also from the content of the contact perspective. What do we know about them? Because I remember back in the early days, it was somebody called and in some cases, it was even before caller ID. And we quickly typed in their name and they say, oh, hey, Jim, I understand. Oh, I know that Joey had his birthday last week. How was that? Right.
Yeah.
And it was so primitive. It
Yeah.
was just that we put in their birthday.
There wasn't that much data, but the secret to relationships is commonality. I call it the 5 F's of life. The family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. These are the things that we share in common in order to build intimacy and trust, to get people to open up to us about their issues so we can then solve them. Because ultimately, business people are problem solvers. We're really solving problems for people. In the old days, you go in somebody's office, you look at their walls, look at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect, to identify those commonalities.
Sure.
Today, we could do that electronically. Back in the gold mine days, you're lucky if Database USA had some basic on the business. So you could type in a company name and we might be able to give you the address and maybe the SIC code and some other basic stuff, but nothing that really gave you the type of intelligence that we have today. You had to do your work and there was no Google. So,
Well, but it was also kind of a repository for and a reflection of the call that we had just had,
yes,
right? We would type in our notes. Here's what I like. When I went to Nimble, the new CRM system, the simplified one, but it is fairly robust as well. One of the things that I found really intriguing that was really attractive to me is when we looked at a contact that was populated in there. And I think we're going to assume for the sake of this podcast that people understand a CRM system and the importance of that. But I want to talk about how it's morphed. When I looked at the system that you've built, and that it is automatically incorporating all of their social media platforms as well, so that you can learn more about them. You can see what their interests are. You can see where they're connected. And that information, of course, gives you power in that conversation. It helps you tap into where those commonalities are to create real connection. Tell me your thought process about taking CRM from what we have traditionally known, and there's no shortage with Salesforce and Confusionsoft and all of those as well, to what you built with Nimble.
You bet. So the first generation of stuff that we built gave you context. It was what you typed in about the person and what you logged. It was email, contact, calendar, notes, and next actions, right? That was your thing. I've got to have a next action with this person. But with Nimble, what we did is it's really the first CRM that automagically builds itself from the contacts you already have in your business. So you have contacts in your email productivity suite, Google or Microsoft, inside your social, and inside your sales, marketing, customer service, and accounting system. So your contacts are siloed today, not just in your business apps, but also for each team member, because Microsoft and Google have a separate contact database for every team member. So the first thing that Nimble does is it automatically unifies all those contacts into one cohesive system for the whole team. Then we enrich that contact with people and company data, so you don't have to Google them, you Nimble them. And then we synchronize the history of interaction for you and the team on email, calendar, and social, so that when you bring up a contact, you automatically know who are they, what's happened, who did it, what's happening, who's going to do it, and a little bit about their business and themselves, because you still need to break the ice. You still need to share the commonalities. We don't start conversations with getting down to the business, like, did you sign the PO? We might say, how's the weather in Denver today? Sure loved getting that Pro Bowler from you for the Rams, because that guy just rocked it, got us to Super Bowl. I think it was Miller. I love that guy. But it's basically sharing those commonalities. So what Nimble does, it really pioneered social CRM and social selling, because when I started to use social in 2006, 7, and 8, I saw it was going to change the way we work, play, buy, and sell. I started looking for a relationship manager that integrated with social. I couldn't find it. I started looking for a CRM that integrated social. I couldn't find it. I saw that CRMs weren't about relationships. They're about reporting. CRM should stand for customer reporting management, not customer relationship management. And the reason they call it Salesforce, you have to force salespeople to use it. So I saw the need for a CRM that basically utilized social for engagement before people really saw that happening. And I went up to LinkedIn and got them to give me their public and private APIs. We integrated Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Crunchbase, AngelList, etc., and just really blew out the doors with social CRM and social selling until LinkedIn decided they want to build Sales Navigator, and they cut everybody off the API. And I had to sort of reimagine what Nimble was going to be without access to all those APIs. And one of the things that I saw was Microsoft ate Novell back in the old days. Novell was the network operating system to tie PCs together. And Microsoft doesn't innovate, they iterate. They wait for someone else to build the market, and they come in when it's big enough with their muscle, and they build something good enough, and then use billions of users and hundreds of thousands of hours to dominate. So they built NT Server, and they basically ate Novell. And I saw that happening back in the goldmine days, and built a version that required NT Server, SQL Server, and Exchange Server, and became a ISV partner with Microsoft, which helped us to grow to that 100 million. And when I saw that Microsoft was launching Microsoft 365, I knew they would do the exact same thing. And so when I lost a bit of the social API, I did two things. First, I built a prospector widget that automatically lived where you live, in your inbox, in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I got back some of that social power. But then I basically integrated deeply with the Microsoft products, but relationships with the people. And I'm happy to announce that Microsoft signed a global reseller agreement where we become the simple CRM for Microsoft 365. And they're basically globally reselling us to all their end users and resellers. And I think one of the big reasons why is their dynamic CRM, while powerful and big, doesn't suit the masses of their SMB users. And most people don't need a big fancy CRM. They need a simple contact platform that layers on their Google and Microsoft. And that's social, because ultimately, if you don't know who somebody is and what their business is about, you haven't done your homework. And if you don't do your homework, you don't win games.
I think one of the trepidations that I've seen over the years, and I certainly would count myself among them, is some of the resistance to it is the tedious nature of inputting data and inputting data and inputting data.
That is the two biggest cause of failure of CRM is lack of use and bad data. Lack of use because you have to beat people to do it. And it's not human nature to type stuff into computers. Most people don't know how to type. And so your CRM should work for you by building itself. And then
but that's one of the things that's intriguing. I want you to talk more about that, because you talk very quickly, because clearly, as somebody who's built companies and raised money, you've said this 100,000 times. For our audience, slow it down a bit. Here's what I would like to hear is mostly what makes this different, because part of what we're talking about is there's no shortage of CRMs available.
The database.
Right, absolutely. And they all generally do the same thing. And if you want to convert one to the other, to migrate that data is not that difficult to assign fields. But what I found really interesting is this one actively, and I don't know if this was an accidental word or you intended to say automagically.
It was intentional.
I love the word, is this, for those who are on Google Exchange or Microsoft 365, this goes and finds all the data connected to particular contacts and populates the fields, finds the social media, populates the fields, finds the calendar data, and builds all of that for you, probably largely, if not entirely. It makes it much less daunting for an organization to adopt something like this.
I think that like we talked about earlier, the biggest cause of failure of CRM is lack of use, because you have to work for it. It doesn't work for you. And then bad data, because people don't like to type stuff in. And even if they do, the data decays like rotten fish. And so if you have to Google somebody before a meeting and then go to the CRM to log that, and then go engage with it wherever you can, email and LinkedIn, and then go back to the CRM to log that, who's going to do that? Nobody's going to do that. So basically, if your CRM could automatically take any name, whether it's a string, Jon Ferrara, or an identity, Jon_Ferrara, my Twitter handle, or an email, john@nimble.com, Nimble can heuristically take that data. If it's a string, it could go suggest the identities, and you could usually say, oh yeah, that's John, click. And then once you add one identity, it automatically adds the other and the ancillary data behind it. So you get an avatar, you get a location, you get a title, you get a company, you get a bio, you get recent social posts. And if it's company, you get all the company details that you want: revenue, location, CEO, all that good stuff. And then if anybody in your team's ever spoken to that person, if you have the email, it'll log the history. If you don't have the email, Nimble will actually give you the email, because if you give Nimble first name, last name, company, domain name, it'll automatically go find their email and maybe even their phone number. And then it automatically builds this record for you in literally 2 clicks. Like, There's no typing. And then you could have built that record in Nimble or in a conversation in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or in your email inbox or in your CRM that you're using, because a lot of people are forced to use some corporate CRM like Salesforce and Dynamics. But you know what? Even if you do use a corporate CRM, you still have to buy sales intelligence, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Zoom Info for your reps. Right. Then you need to buy outreach software, sales software, Outreach.io, because sales reps aren't given the market automation system. You need to give them a rifle, which is templated trackable emails. So by the time you get done buying all this stuff, like I just said, Salesforce, $100 per user per month. SalesLoft, $100 per user per month. Zoom Info, $100 per user per month. The sales reps don't even use it because they don't know how. So you have to hire a sales administrator to do it. And so,
and then it also becomes a point of friction within the organizations. Yeah. And you get all the pushback of saying, oh, now they're going to make us do all of this. I'm too busy trying to do this. And I've been a part of organizations where there was a revolt that started off as just passive aggressive aversion. You know, you see that a lot of just not doing it. Or you go back to what's that movie in Monsters Inc. She's like, Mike Wazowski, you didn't turn in your sales reports, right? Because everybody's too busy doing the work to do this. But
the tool should be able to dance with the rep in the way that they dance, because not all reps dance the same way. And so I think that if your system can tell the rep something they don't know, who is this person? What is their business about? Automatically create records for them, log the basic stuff of email and calendar so they don't need to, then they can do the basics. The basics in business is logging a note on the call and scheduling the next action. That's it.
Right.
If you don't have a log of a call and the next action that you're supposed to do, then you can't follow up and follow through. But if you don't have to do everything else we just talked about, Googling them, typing in all that stuff, logging email and calendar, and it automatically did everything but the basics, and it did it where you're living. If you're prospecting in LinkedIn, or if you're in an email, or if you're in some other business app, it's game changing.
We're talking to Jon Ferrara with Nimble CRM. Talk to us about smaller businesses. Certainly larger enterprises, they've understood for a long time they have to have a robust CRM system. There'll always be pushback from salespeople and other as well. And in those kind of cases, you're really looking, even from a sales perspective for your company, it's not really customer acquisition for you, it's customer conversion. You have to convince them to stop working with who they're working with, why your system is better. But for small businesses, for emerging businesses who have not yet adopted a system for their organization as they build their company, as I have a new venture I'm building as well, what is your counsel? What is your advice? What's your admonition to them about starting this early in a way that's not daunting, so that it grows with the organization, so that new people, as they grow, this is our system, as opposed to the challenge of trying to introduce something later on. And I've been a part of those teams where it came in later on and there's a lot of pushback. Talk to me about small businesses starting early, putting systems in place.
Great question, David. I think that one of the great things about Nimble is it's focused on contacts and relationships. And in a small business, there's a lot of people wearing a lot of hats. It's not a defined role of you're in sales, you're in biz dev, you're in marketing, you're in leadership, whatever.
We're all doing everything.
We're all really doing everything. And so the mistake people make with CRMs is they basically think it's a place to put prospects and customers for salespeople to pound. But the reality is that in most companies, 100 people, there's only 5 salespeople. So what's the rest of the people in the company doing? I think that if you're an entrepreneur and you have a small business, you should have a relationship manager that's used by the whole team, so that no matter who picks up the phone, they're on one page with whoever that person is, because it takes a village. It takes a constituency around your business in order for you to grow it. And so first thing you do as a business is you get a domain, you build a website, and you get an email productivity system. So you're going to either pick Microsoft or Google. So now that you have email, contact, and calendar, then what you need is a contact database. And so that's what you buy Nimble for. And you give Nimble ideally to anybody who's interacting with those customers. And you just teach them to do the basics is, if this person is significant to the company, make sure you build a record and log a note and schedule the next task. It's really the basics. And then as you evolve and you build a website and you start driving leads to it, and you want to capture those leads and put it into a lead qualification workflow, we can do that. And speaking of workflows, David, how many times have you seen people use spreadsheets to manage contacts?
Most of the time.
Yes. So there's 225 million global businesses, less than 1% use any CRM. Most people's CRM is their inbox or spreadsheets or post-it notes. And I think the reason why is what we've been discussing all this time. But when you think about spreadsheets, what are they really used for? They're used for workflow, repeatable business processes for the people and companies that you're engaging with. It could be for investors, it could be for prospects, it could be for biz dev, it could be for podcast outreach. And so I noticed that people were starting to sort of bastardize deals into more of a workflow for things non-sales related. And so I myself suffered from building spreadsheets for press outreach or trying to use Trello to build a board and a process for this. So what I did is I worked with our design team to build something called workflows that enables you to build a board of stages with cards that represent people or companies that allow you to put the custom fields in there that you want to collect to put people through the process. And I'm just going to share one example of that we're doing at Nimble, which is important to every business hiring. So we put an ad in Indeed for a social media marketing associate. We got 60 applicants. Imagine managing 60 applicants. So what we did is we built a board for the applicants. The first stage is first pass, where we do the sort of the sniff test. We look at their LinkedIn, we look at their resume, we say, is this person a fit and worth outreaching for an interview? If they are, we add them to that first board. We link their LinkedIn, we link their resume, and we use a templated email to send an invite to a meeting. And then basically we move them through those stages. But you could think about almost anything across all departments in the company where you need workflow processes, including collecting money, onboarding new employees, biz dev, et cetera. And I think that workflows is a game changer for businesses in order to build the repeatable processes they need to scale.
Well, and it's more than, I think what solves the problem of having too many systems, too many processes that don't necessarily talk to each other.
Yes.
I think the obvious solution is to work with those organizations, get them to talk to each other. But the best solution, of course, is creating an all-in-one platform that does all of this. The part that comes to my mind as somebody who is not detail-oriented is it sounds daunting. As simple as it is for somebody like you who understands this, who does all of this, there may be one or two people in the organization who are responsible for this, but my understanding is you created something for everybody to use. So when you talk about workflow and others, is this a drag and drop? Tell me about the input methodology that makes it less daunting for especially solopreneurs, small business and others to create something like this who say, I'm just not good at this.
Sure. So there's templates that you could pick from that we've already built for, I think, 15 different use cases across your entire company. So you have to think about it. I think a lot of times when you imagine if you had to go to Nordstrom's and they showed you, they basically said, describe the suit you want, as opposed to you get to pick suits that are already pre-made and then they tailor them to you. You tailor them to yourself. So you have a workflow that's applicable within a range to your business. And then you can go and modify the stages and you can modify the data that you want to collect on each card and make it your own. And then once you've done that, then you'll understand how to build one. It's really not that hard. And I think that's one of the things that people love about Nimble is that it is really super simple. And I think that it's really beneficial to any company considering a CRM, because if you're going to go implement Salesforce or Dynamics, it's going to take months and tens of thousands of dollars. Right. But in many cases, people don't know what they want. And what they should do is rather than going and buying a 25-speed road bike or a 25-speed mountain bike, they should buy something with training wheels that they can get started with, right? A nice hybrid and get to know what they want. And then, a nice $300 bike. And then graduate into that $3,000 one once you sort of figure out what you want.
As the name would suggest, is Nimble one of those platforms that can grow with you, or does it come as robust as it comes, or you can do it as a basic system and add features as you grow and as your needs grow?
Well, one of the cool things is you could tailor it to your own. So you could build custom fields and tabs. Because it's integrated with Microsoft, you could start using things like Power BI, Power Automate, and Flow, and all these different things to extend it. We integrate with literally thousands of cloud SaaS business apps. So if you're using other front and back office apps, you can integrate them. And then if for some reason you outgrow Nimble, like you need one of those big dynamic or Salesforce CRMs, you could actually go and use that and then use Nimble in conjunction with it. Because as I said, if you buy Salesforce today, you have to go buy Sales Intelligence, Zoom Info, or LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You have to buy Outreach software, Outreach.io, SalesLoft. Each of those are $100 per user per month. Nimble's $25 per user per month. Every company still needs a team contact platform. So you could use Nimble as your team contact platform. You could use it as SFA and Sales Intelligence add-on for the reps. You could give them Salesforce to do the robust stuff that you want, but then they could use Nimble in their inbox, in LinkedIn, and anywhere else they're working to add records, update records, and all that adding and updating goes into Salesforce for them. So we basically extend Salesforce and make it more nimble for your sales reps.
Talk to me about the support systems that you've built for new users to walk them through systems, tutorial videos, and things like that. How does somebody onboard if they have never worked with a CRM system before, or looking to potentially migrate to something that's a little more robust while at the same time a little bit easier? What systems, what support do you guys offer to help people make all that happen?
Well, David, we just launched this new onboarding widget. I wish we had a different term than widget, because a widget is so technical. But essentially, it's a guidance system that walks you through the key things that you should be doing in order to be successful. Because we've learned that from our customers, including walking you through your first workflows, adding your first records, as well as adding Nimble to your Microsoft or Google email, adding our mobile, adding our browser prospector plugin, and even loading sample data, so you can sort of see Nimble as it would be with a company that's already been using it. Plus, we have onboarding videos across all the different sections. And then you could join our success team for webinars that we hold throughout the week, where you can get some one-on-one consulting. And you can message us from within the app, and we'll respond to you and answer your one-on-one questions. We have knowledge bases. And then we have a partner network worldwide that you could work with partners that have different skill sets depending on your needs of Nimble, all the way from straight up technology advisors to accountants that are doing front and back office technology consulting in addition to their bookkeeping.
I am a fan. I'll be honest that I hired somebody else to set all this stuff up for me, because she's really good at it. But I'm one of those people, I say, I can follow process, don't make me create it. And I think there are others who are like me as well, but I could not survive without CRM. It is the single number one thing that I attribute my growth and my success to, from when I went from being a solopreneur 20 years ago to having full team, full staff, and everything else, is because I had those systems built and those systems in place. For me, it's fascinating to watch what you're doing, because it's becoming so much more than just a repository for information.
No,
but the integration, that the places that it finds information to make us better equipped to do the work we do. Go ahead.
So everybody listening to this today should have their own personal CRM. Their own
Absolutely.
Rolodex. They say your network is your net worth. Your personal brand and your professional network will help you achieve your dreams in life, which I hope include helping others achieve theirs, because the more people you help grow, the more you will grow. And so what you should be doing is building an identity in all the places where your prospects and your customers and their influencers have conversations about how to be better, smarter, faster. You should be sharing content in those places to inspire and educate them. If you can't write, then curate other people's stuff that inspires you. And then listen and engage with the intent not to connect and sell, but to connect and serve, because service is the new selling. And then basically begin to nurture those relationships. If you do what I just said to do, you're going to have tens of thousands of connections. And guess what? You won't be able to manage them, because there's a Dunbar limit. You can only manage 100, 200 people in your head at one time. And so you'll need a system to do that. And most CRMs aren't built for relationships. If you Google CRM and look up Pipedrive, it's the sales operating system. So if all your company does is sales, go buy a sales CRM. If you believe that relationships are critical to your business success, and it's more than prospects and customers and sales and marketing people that do it, go try nimble.
If people want to get in touch with you, Jon Ferrara, how do they get in touch with you and learn more about Nimble?
Well, you know what? I think people should Google me because, in fact, I think they should Google themselves and see if you show up on that first page. And if you don't, you could fix that. Go build a Wikipedia page for yourself. It's free. It's easy as long as you follow the rules. So Google me, Jon space Ferrara, and connect with me on whatever channel you're comfortable with. And if you want, email me. My email is john@nimble.com. And if you go to nimble.com and you sign up for a free 2-week trial and you dig what you see and want to become a subscriber, use the code JOHN40, JON40, and you'll get 40% off your first 3 months.
Outstanding. Jon, hang on the other side. We'll talk briefly afterwards. A big thanks to Jon Ferrara for being my guest. You can pick up a copy of my new book. This is the self-promotional part, Jon, of my podcast. Of my new book, The Morning Huddle, Powerful Customer Experience Conversations to Wake You Up, Shake You Up, and Win More Business. If you're watching the video version, you can see all of the rest of my books here next to my head. Most of them are on Audible and other languages around the world as well. Be sure to click to like this podcast, subscribe, leave a comment, really important, just leave a comment and click the little bell icon to receive notifications of new episodes. You can learn more about my keynote speaking, my consulting, look me up at davidavrin.com. Thanks for tuning in, Customer Experience Advantage podcast. Be sure to leave a comment here, subscribe. Big thanks to my guest, Jon Ferrara. I'm David Avrin.
Thank you.
Be good, thanks.
This has been the Customer Experience Advantage podcast with David Avrin. Feel free to leave a comment and be sure to hit the thumbs up button. You can listen to past episodes and be notified of future ones by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. David's popular marketing and customer experience books are available in print, as well as Kindle and audiobook, and published in multiple languages around the world. You can stay connected and learn more at davidavrin.com. Thanks for tuning in.